You are afraid of things that cannot hurt you. Spiders in a country with no deadly species. Darkness in a house with locked doors. Heights on a balcony built to hold 10 times your weight. Snakes in a city where none exist. You know these fears are irrational. You cannot reason your way out of them. And that inability, that gap between what your mind knows and what your body feels, is one of the most important clues we have about what ancient humans actually feared most. Because these fears are not yours. They are inherited, and they were earned. For most of human evolutionary history, we were not apex predators. We were prey. This is uncomfortable to accept. We think of ourselves as the dominant species, the hunters, the ones at the top. But the fossil record tells a different story. A 2025 study led by anthropologist Manuel Dominguez-Rodrigo at Rice University used AI-powered computer vision to analyze bite marks on Homo habilis fossils, one of our earliest tool-using ancestors. The results were unambiguous. Leopards had been eating them, not occasionally, systematically. The skull of a Paranthropus robustus, an early hominin discovered in South Africa, shows 2 distinct puncture marks that paleontologist C.K. Brain matched precisely to the canines of an ancient African leopard. The child had been ambushed, dragged, and consumed. The same story, repeated across millions of years of fossil evidence. Leopards were not the only threat. The Taung child, a 2.5-million-year-old Australopithecus africanus skull discovered in South Africa, shows damage consistent with a large eagle's talons and beak. A child killed from above. The African crowned eagle, which still hunts primates today, was likely responsible. Overhead was not safe. The ground was not safe. The water held crocodiles. The grass held hyenas and saber-toothed cats. Our ancestors did not stand at the top of the food chain. They stood somewhere in the middle, looking in every direction. So what did they fear most? The research points to 3 things, layered on top of each other like sediment. And all 3 of them are still running inside you right now. The first was predators, specifically the predators that were hardest to detect. Psychologist Lynne Isbell at the University of California has argued, with significant supporting evidence, that the coevolution of snakes and primates drove some of the most significant changes in the primate brain over 60 million years. Snakes are difficult to see. They do not move like other predators. They blend into the environment. They strike without warning. The response to this pressure, Isbell argues, was the development of enhanced visual processing, color vision, sharper pattern recognition, faster threat detection, all driven by the need to spot something that did not want to be spotted. The fear of snakes is not learned. Vervet monkeys and macaques respond with alarm to partially exposed snake images, to snake scale patterns, even to abstract representations of snake-like shapes. Infants who have never seen a snake show measurable physiological responses to snake images. Psychologist Martin Seligman named this pattern prepared learning in a 1971 paper. The idea that humans are biologically predisposed to acquire certain fears far more readily than others. Snakes, darkness, heights, spiders. These fears are acquired rapidly, often in a single exposure, and are extraordinarily resistant to rational override. You cannot think your way out of a million-year-old survival circuit. The second great fear was darkness. This one is almost too obvious once you understand it. Our eyes are optimized for daylight, color vision, sharp detail, spatial precision. All of it degrades dramatically as light falls. Leopards can hear 5 times better than humans. Lions are 4 times more effective hunters in the dark than in daylight. Hyenas, nocturnal and built for the dark, had every sensory advantage over a human being standing in the open after sunset. A 2011 study published in PLOS ONE by Craig Packer and colleagues at the University of Minnesota analyzed lion attack data in Tanzania and found that attacks on humans increased dramatically in the days following a full moon. Not because the moon caused something, but because humans had learned to move more freely in moonlight, and leopards had learned to exploit those moments. Darkness was not just frightening to ancient humans. It was quantifiably, measurably more dangerous. The darkness was the domain of everything that wanted to eat you. This is why campfire is one of the oldest and most powerful symbols in human history. A campfire creates a circle of safety roughly 30 feet in diameter. Inside that circle, predators will not come. Every human culture on Earth, across every continent, shares the ritual of gathering around fire at night. This is not coincidence. It is the behavioral fossil of a fear so deep it organized entire societies around its management. Psychologist Martin Seligman's concept of prepared learning applies here too. Studies show that fear of darkness peaks in children between ages 4 and 6 across every culture studied, including cultures with no particular mythology around nighttime danger. The cross-cultural universality of this pattern rules out learned behavior. What shows up instead looks like a developmental program switching on. An ancient instruction activating at the developmental moment when a child begins to move independently and would, in the ancestral environment, be most vulnerable. The third fear was strangers. Other humans. This is the one people talk about least, but the evidence is substantial. Violence between human groups appears in the fossil record far earlier than most people realize. Forensic analysis of Neanderthal remains shows repeated evidence of interpersonal violence. Blunt force trauma, cut marks consistent with lethal wounds, healed injuries indicating survival of prior attacks. Homo sapiens were not peaceful before civilization. Research by anthropologist Lawrence Keeley, summarized in his book War Before Civilization, found that skeletal evidence from prehistoric sites across multiple continents shows rates of violent death that dwarf most modern conflicts. The fear of the outsider, the stranger from beyond the group's known territory, was not paranoia. It was statistically grounded. An unknown human was a genuine threat. The amygdala's rapid threat assessment, the automatic wariness that appears when encountering the unfamiliar, the in-group bias that researchers like Henry Teifel documented in his minimal group paradigm, all of these are the neurological residue of a social environment where meeting a stranger was a potentially lethal event. We do not merely fear predators, we fear each other. And underneath all three of these fears, the predator, the darkness, the stranger, is a fourth thing that ties them together. The one fear that is harder to name but runs deepest of all, the unknown. Specifically, the thing you cannot see that might be there. Error management theory, developed by psychologists Marty Hazelton and David Buss, proposes that the human brain evolved to make a specific kind of mistake systematically. When facing uncertainty, a rustle in the grass, a shadow moving at the edge of vision, a sound from outside the circle of firelight, it is far cheaper to assume the worst and be wrong than to assume safety and be eaten. A false alarm costs energy. A missed alarm costs everything. So the brain defaults to threat. Always. In every moment of ambiguity, the ancient circuitry fires before the rational mind can weigh in. The rustle was probably wind. Your body does not wait to find out. This is why horror films work. The monster is most frightening before you see it. The director who shows you nothing, who leaves the shadow at the edge of the frame, who lets your imagination fill the darkness. That director is not being clever. They are accessing the deepest architectural feature of the human brain, the feature that kept your ancestors alive long enough to produce you. You live in a world with locked doors and electric lights and almost no apex predators within 100 miles. But your brain does not know that. It is still scanning, still watching the edge of the firelight for something that no longer exists. The fears you carry are not weaknesses. They are receipts, evidence of every predator that hunted your lineage. Every night your ancestors survived by staying close to the fire. Every stranger they treated with caution until proven safe. Every shadow they watched until the sun came up. You are afraid of things that cannot hurt you. But once, they could. And the ones who were not afraid of them did not survive to pass anything on to anyone. You are here because your ancestors were afraid. That fear kept you coming.